what we want to do is talk about the U.S. Mexico competitiveness agenda as it affects our region here in Southern California and Baja California. How do we work together to make our part of the world, our part of the border, our part of North America more competitive, to create the jobs we're looking for, to create the industries we're looking for, the way we want to create those industries, and to create the prosperity that we want for our citizens and for our children, whichever side of the border that we live on. The Institute of the Americas is here in San Diego. We are co-hosting this event with the Council of the Americas, similar name, different organization, which has its headquarters in New York with offices in Washington and Miami. Before I go a little bit further, there are a couple of people I want to introduce. Remedios, who is the Consul General of Mexico, Remedios Gomez Arnau. There's the mayor, and then there's the person who's really important in San Diego, and that's Remedios. Yeah, okay, he'll be mad, but we all know it's true. And I want to thank you for coming, and we got a lot of staff from the consulate who is here. I'm going to do the second level of introductions after the mayor speaks, because he's got to run the city. So I don't want to hold him up. But now I want to give the microphone to John Negroponte, who is the chairman of the Council of the Americas. But wait, there's more. John is also the vice chairman of McClarty and Associates. He is former ambassador to Honduras, Mexico, Philippines, the United Nations, and Iraq. Did I leave out anything? No. The first director of national intelligence, and for me, the most important, he's my former boss, is the Deputy Secretary of State, and so I'm very grateful for him for putting up with me. So, John, I'm going to give you the microphone.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor, for attending the opening of our event this morning. We appreciate that a great deal, and although they will all be introduced later on the panels, I do want to express appreciation to everyone from Mexico who has taken the trouble to come and join us here at our meeting today. We certainly appreciate that effort on your part, and I take it also as a statement of the importance you attach to the subjects that we will be discussing here today. And obviously that's what brings us all together. As was mentioned, I guess my credentials for being here today are twofold. First, I am the chairman of the Council of the Americas and the Americas Society. They're two parallel organizations under the same umbrella, if you will. And the Council of the Americas has 200 American and multinational corporate members. That's the core membership of the Council. And it interests itself in commercial and economic ties throughout the hemisphere, not exclusively Mexico. And we support programs of this kind and others throughout the hemisphere during the entire year. We have a cities program, for example, that holds one-day meetings, gatherings of large numbers of people, trying to promote economic relations between ourselves in Mexico, in Mexico City, in Brazil, in Peru, and so forth, all up and down the length of the hemisphere. This meeting, to some extent at least, is part of a personal initiative of mine. When I took over as chairman of the Council of the Americas, David Rockefeller, our chairman emeritus and the founder of our organization, encouraged us to put more emphasis on the trade agenda. This is back in 2009 when I took over as chairman of the organization. The feeling being that after 9/11, we put so much emphasis on security, perhaps quite understandably and naturally, but that we lost sight a bit of the issue of competitiveness, and particularly of North American competitiveness. So in part as a response to that, I initiated a series of meetings under the sponsorship of our organization. The first one was last year in Laredo, Texas, on how we can increase awareness of the opportunities along the United States-Mexico border. My second qualification, of course, for being here today is that I was once ambassador to Mexico and was fortunate enough to be there during the time that we both conceived and completed the negotiations of the North American Free Trade Agreement. So I see this as part of an effort to get back to the original purposes of the NAFTA. We need to update our thinking about that. We've got to make ourselves more competitive, and perhaps there are things that we can do and we can talk about here today and in other fora to explore ways in which we, Americans and Mexicans, can work together to increase our competitiveness, to increase economic opportunities. I think the moment is very propitious. I think China, perhaps maybe their costs are rising to a point where maybe the renminbi is not as competitive as the Mexican currency. We've already seen some companies that left Mexico, manufacturing companies for China, now thinking about coming back. Perhaps not as many have come back as left, but that remains to be determined, right, in the future. And the other thing I'd say, and I'm going to stop here because we all want to hear from the mayor. The other thing I'd say is I sensed yesterday, just in my brief discussions I had in Tijuana, we went and visited DJ Orthopedics, one of the manufacturing companies down there that makes a lot of different kinds of orthopedic equipment. But there, and in a reception that we had at the consulate, and at a dinner last night at a very interesting sort of cuisine nouvelle restaurant called Mission 19. I thought, is that the right name? Yes. Mission Impossible. It was really good. I felt that people might be a little bit behind in their assessment of where the American economy is headed. I think they're still thinking that, well, we got knocked back on our heels and that we aren't in that good shape, and we're sort of playing second fiddle to certain other economies in the world. And I'm not so sure that's true anymore. I think the worst is over. The economy has been steadily recuperating. Employment is being generated. The president devoted, 80% of his speech the other night to the issue of economic recovery. I sense an optimism in the United States. You can certainly see it on Wall Street. For the time which lies ahead. So I think it's a good time to be talking about these things. Mexico, of course, has been doing extremely well in the last couple of years. And lastly, I guess I'd say, my original motivation in suggesting that we hold these kinds of meetings is to try to put a little bit of emphasis on the fact that there's other news coming out of U.S. Mexico relations than the issue of narcotics and law enforcement and violence. And it's a challenge to penetrate that mindset here in our country, but we just absolutely have to keep working on it and insisting on it. Obviously, drug trafficking and related issues are things that we need to keep working on, but it's not the only issue. And in fact, the real way we're going to deal with that problem, among many others, is to lift the levels of prosperity in both of our countries so that we have the wherewithal to overcome those kinds of challenges. So thank you, all of you, for attending today. And let me turn the microphone back over to Charles, who I'm sure will want to introduce the mayor.
Thank you. For the 3 people in the room who don't know who Bob Filner is, he's the mayor of San Diego. He's a member of Congress for 20 years and mayor of San Diego for 10 weeks. At this point, we're looking forward as his administration moves into the future, and he is I'm going to say this, it should be true. If it's not true, I think it's true, that he is the mayor of San Diego who is, in the history of all the mayors of San Diego, who is the most interested in Tijuana-San Diego relations and integrating the economies of San Diego and Tijuana. Is that true?
Por supuesto.
Yeah, there you go. He also is, I think this is also true, the first mayor of San Diego to have a PhD. So here he is at a university. Dr. Filner, I'm going to
Thank you.
turn the microphone over to you.
Dr. Mayor will be good. Buenos días a todos. Magandang umaga. Mr. Ambassador, I think I'm Mr. Ambassador too, because I think the job of mayor with regard to this issue is one of really bringing to San Diego a new kind of message about where the role of Mexico is in our life, in our economy, and in our cultural affairs. And San Diego has to be part of a learning process, I think. I don't know if you've heard this statistic, Mr. Ambassador, but 65% of San Diegans have never crossed the border south. I mean, that says something is wrong. But we're going to try to do what we can to right it. I think you were correct, Ambassador Shapiro, in noting the importance of our Consul General. I have done a lot of research on this. She is not only the most effective Consul General for Mexico in the United States, but she's also the most beautiful. So we have... What'd you say?
Be careful.
This is why they don't let me become a diplomat, guys.
Must be Valentine's Day.
So we're looking forward to really changing the whole sense of where we are with our border. You know, we are the biggest city on the border with Mexico. We are the biggest metropolitan binational area in the world. And yet we have simply not realized the potential economically or culturally of that situation. And I'd like to say that rather than a cul-de-sac of California or San Diego, which the border has sort of become, it should become the center of activity, of energy, of dynamism. We live in a very unique area, a binational area. We ought to be taking advantage of it. I mean, there's not many people in the world who have the situation that we have, and we have simply not done that. As Charles said, I have been mayor almost 10 weeks. I think I've been to Tijuana 10 times in those 10 weeks, which is probably more than all the mayors combined before me. We're about to open the first municipal office in San Diego municipal office in Tijuana, working with our Consul General to make sure that occurs. Next week on the 22nd, I think at 10:30 in the morning, we're going to inaugurate our office. As you know, Tijuana has had an office in San Diego for many years. And not only is it just a matter of mutual respect for us, but we need to be in touch every day on issues not only of trade, but of all kinds of issues, personal issues, immigration issues, cultural issues, exchanges. I mean, we just need to talk all the time. And the mayor of Tijuana and myself are going to have a phone on our desk. The mayor of Tijuana calls it a bat phone. I call it a hotline. The red. What was it? The red phone in the president's office, Mr. Ambassador. So we can just pick up the phone and talk to each other. Whenever we can. So and Senor Bustamante and I and Consul General Gomez and Consul General Erickson. And the two mayors are working to formulate an agenda which we need to tap all of you and your activity in various organizations, that we will look at the mega region as a group, as a way of talking about all this. We're looking at, of course, the infrastructure at the border, and the cultural kinds of exchanges that will really, I think, give excitement to this relationship for the general population. I mean, whether it's concerts, binational concerts, or ways to, we're going to have a mariachi opera. The opera company in San Diego is going to show that, in fact, there's a high level of musical talent and understanding and sophistication in mariachi, and they're going to concentrate on that in a weekend program here in San Diego. And then we're going to have a cross-border contrapuntal concert from the rooftops of two buildings. I'll get to that at some other point. Got a crazy mayor here. So we're taking every opportunity to talk about the infusion of our binational situation into every aspect of life. Mario Lopez here is our Director of Binational Affairs. He has strong roots in both Tijuana and San Diego, and knows both the economic and political situation on both sides of the border. So we are going to be beefing up that. We're going to have a intellectual think tank in the mayor's office that several foundations are thinking about funding, that we get a whole intellectual background. It's nice to be on a campus as a former professor. I was at a real university, though, San Diego State. But clearly, but people have asked me, what's the difference between my life as a professor and my life as a politician? And I say, well, the first is all thought and no action, and the other is all action and no thought. And what the groups here allow us to do is bring that together. And we need, obviously, an intellectual understanding, the data, the basis for a vision and a program, but then we got to put that in action. Lastly, the key issue for dealing with our competitiveness, which is the theme of your conference, is you got to be able to cross the border quickly and efficiently. Our Mexican friends in both directions. Our Mexican friends are here today. I don't know if you had to start at 2 or 3 in the morning to make sure you get here on time, but this is atrocious. I mean, this is borders on criminal, if I may say so, that we have two friendly nations who depend on each other economically, who depend on each other in so many ways, where our families are interrelated and all that, and yet there's no reasonable way to plan on crossing the border in a reasonable fashion. I've represented the border in Congress for 20 years, on the city council for 5. We know how to do this. It's a question of political will. So we're going to concentrate that. I mean, how do you sell our mega region, either for investors or for tourism, if you can't cross the border quickly? I mean, why, when we have foreign visitors or international visitors come to San Diego, they're inspected by TSA. Why don't we just allow them right to go through the border, so they're 8 minutes from attractions in Tijuana instead of 8 hours away in both directions, where you can go and explore the restaurants and the other attractions and the innovadora aspects of Tijuana quickly and return. That is, we ought to be marketing this, and certainly the businesses in the same way. People have got to be able to do that very quickly. And as I said, the consul generals and the mayors are working to get an alliance between our governors, our mayors, our chambers of commerce along the border, to really impress upon this administration that as you're talking about comprehensive immigration reform, for example, which I think has a real chance this year, that we have infused in those conversations the commercial and the border infrastructure necessary to have that relationship work. When Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano was in town last week, after having as usual, a tough meeting with me, she said at her press conference, she talked about comprehensive immigration reform and an efficient border, and a way to bring in the commercial aspects and the interrelation aspects which that border represents, to make that part of what comprehensive immigration reform is all about. So we're working on changing that national debate. With my experience and contacts in Washington, I think we can do that, and I'm looking forward to really making the concept. Whether we say dos ciudades y una región, to make that real. to make that real, and not just expression that we're all looking to. So thank you for your study. Many of the groups represented here have studied this a long time. I think you should look at this with new optimism and new confidence, because we have the ability now to put some of those thoughts and ideas into action. We're going to do that here in San Diego, and I look forward to working with you to do that. Muchísimas gracias.
We're going to continue. Before we move to panel number one, there are a couple of people I want to recognize all of you for coming on Valentine's Day, and I'm delighted you're all here. Having said that, the Institute of the Americas has got a couple of people on our board here, which is very important. Sergio Ley flew in yesterday from Beijing for this. I want to thank you, Sergio. I mean, it's tremendous, and you'll be very impressed by him. He's a fabulous speaker, and there's nobody who understands the Mexican economy better or the relations between Mexico and Asia better than Sergio Ley, former ambassador of Mexico in Beijing. And Malin Burnham, who is a member of our board. And those of you who are from San Diego know Malin. His name's on half the buildings in town. And delighted to have you here. And this is the issue that really interests Malin, and he is always on top of it. And I'm sure he's going to have some views he's going to want to share with us.
And if I could mention,
yeah, please,
Arnulfo Valdivia, and single him out also, because he's the president of the Institute of Mexicans Abroad, but equally important, he was very involved in the President of Mexico's campaign, political campaign, and he's a charter member of our series of conferences because he was also a speaker at our conference in Laredo. So we appreciate that kind of consistent support. We really do.
There are 5 companies I want to recognize who have underwritten this conference today. They are Sempra International and McClarty Associates. You may have had something to do with that. I appreciate it. Also, Procopio, a law firm here in San Diego, now the oldest San Diego law firm. El Florido, which is from Tijuana. El Florido has this fabulous industrial park, housing development area, which and commercial area, which we had the opportunity to see a small part of it yesterday. And Weber Bank, which is here and has helped us out, and I'm very appreciative of Weber Bank. And so now, we're going to, if anybody has any questions for the mayor, this might be a good time to ask them. You have to hit the button and turn the light on.
I was actually just down in Mexico City last week talking with some folks, and when you talk about economic competitiveness, it seems as if a big part of that is education and competitiveness of the workforce. And it seems as if Mexico shares a lot of the same issues in K through 12 public education as we do here in the States. But the education side of this is not something I hear much discussion of. I'm curious if members of the panel have any thoughts on how, as we in the States confront K through 12 public education issues, there can also be some cross-fertilization and coordination with our counterparts in Mexico on the same issues.
Well, I don't have the answer, but let me give you some aspects we're thinking about. Number one is, of course, exchanges that between students, teachers, artists, not just people who are in business, that has to happen, and that builds up, not only people-to-people contacts, but understanding and strengthens our educational system. is there any press in the room? I want to have an off-the-record statement here that, no, we have to have a whole new understanding of bilingualism in our educational system. You know, we tend to say, oh, you have an accent, you must be something wrong with you, instead of saying, hey, we should all be learning 2 languages. I really don't even care what 2, because, you know, bilingualism as a training of the mind is so important. But, you know, most people will choose to be Spanish, bilingual in Spanish. It's muy importante, obviously, that we do that. And we ought to have an infusion in the educational system of the importance of being bilingual in the 21st century. You know, McDonald's understands that. They don't hire anybody that's not bilingual. Why does the rest of us, we still think, you know, that somehow, you know, English, obviously we have to know and be well prepared in English, but the world is changing. We have to learn other languages too and be part of that world. So I would hope to infuse a new understanding and appreciation and practice of bilingualism in the school system, where we have, you know, we have gotten away from it. We have said, no, you can't be bilingual in the school system. I mean, there was a state referendum on that. So we have to change it. That's what I meant about being an ambassador to San Diego. But that's a couple things I would say. I have some other plans that are more general, but if there's any comment by all of you.
We're going to let you, you're the expert here. You're the only educator. I take it back.
Can I add one? I'm actually a professor, yes. Yeah. He was a professor.
Are a professor.
And a professor at Yale, too.
Although not with the same lengthy credentials.
He's a professor at Yale?
The mayor has. Yes.
They threw me out of Yale, so we have a...
Sorry, I wasn't there at the time to help.
Save me.
I wanted to mention another side of this, which is Mexico graduates 100,000 engineers a year. And I'm not sure that is very widely known here in this country. And compared to, I was ambassador from 89 to 93, so now that's almost 25 years ago. And I just think that there's been a dramatic improvement in the level of education of the Mexican people, number one. And number two, talk about bilingualism. It was hard to find Mexicans who spoke English in the 1980s. I mean, you couldn't just walk into any store or hotel or anywhere else and find people who you could count on to speak English. I think that's just not true today. I think there's a lot more bilingualism and high quality. So I think we need to take advantage of that.
If I could
too.
just a political statement here as we talk about competitiveness, and I mean, you were talking about Mexico. You know, Mexico is the new China kind of thing. I think we ought to be stressing as a region, you know, don't come to Mexico because of lower wages. Come to Mexico because of the innovation of the educational system, of the developing economy, of the arts and culture. I don't think it's in our interest to say, oh no, come to Mexico because of low wages. Not only does that give a completely uncomprehensive view of Mexico, but it doesn't stress the real way things of why people will relocate anyway. I mean, we're having this debate with the governor of Texas, and who goes who, and you could say, well, we have lower taxes or lower wages or lower regulation. I say, well, what about education? What about the quality of life? What about the ability of the education system to prepare your workforce, or the quality of arts and culture in your society? The value of innovation. I keep looking at Pepe there, but you have brought up Tijuana to understand, or brought Tijuana, not only Tijuanians but Americans, to an understanding of what Tijuana can do. So, as we talk about this today, I think we have to stress more than, quote, we'll pay you less, because that's not what Mexico is. It's a much more, I don't think, and it doesn't help our relationship if that's the way the U.S. is looking at Mexico as a place for low-wage kind of thing. We want to talk about high quality of life as a reason why you should invest in the mega region or the binational region, not because you got lower wages than the Chinese. I mean, I don't think that's what we want to say, frankly.
Amen.
While Mayor Bob is here, I'd like to make a statement and a suggestion. Bob didn't say it, but he has more good connections in Washington, D.C. as our mayor than all three of our past mayors put together. and he has a loud voice, and he's willing to use it. And so we do have some advantages that we haven't had before. Having said that, I'd like to throw out something that came to our attention this week. For any of you who either saw or read President Obama's State of the Union talk the other night, he made a proposal that he wants to expand the one manufacturing hub, and I think it was in Ohio, into 15 underprivileged manufacturing hubs in the country. Why don't we use Tijuana, San Diego as one of those examples, one of those prospects, where where U.S. government funding, even on the Mexican side, helps jobs on the U.S. side in this particular theater. We've got a one-of-a-kind opportunity. So, Bob, there's another place where you can use your voice and help.
Jump in here, and maybe one of the ways you could sell it to Washington was if the government of Mexico was willing to go 50-50 with the U.S. government on promoting this hub.
Great idea.
That's a great. Enrique, this is the last question. We're going to move to the next panel. And you need a microphone somewhere so we can hear you.
No, he doesn't need a microphone.
Mayor, as you're being a former congressman and always being a friend of Mexico, we know that President Obama has been very active in the immigration reform in this last speech. What do you see as a former congressman and now mayor as the biggest challenge in passing humane immigration reform this year, and what can you recommend to all of us in this region to help that become a reality?
If I wasn't a diplomatic mayor of a high level, I would say Republicans as answer to your question, but no, I wouldn't. Look, I think we have, because of a variety of factors, and especially the election that occurred both nationally and around the country, where the Latino voice was seen as so much more powerful. I mean, I think I'm mayor because of the Latino vote in San Diego. So, both parties want to do now comprehensive immigration. I think we have the best chance. Obviously, if you can begin to bring people out of the shadows in San Diego, everywhere, you have a much more a better life for everybody. And you can tap the resources of all our community in doing that. Your question was, what can we do here? I mean, I just think you have to continue, and so many of you are in your daily life showing how important this relationship is, and how important it is to have people on both sides talking to each other, people within our communities understanding each other, doing it in two languages so we understand all of that and what that means. I think. And there are lobbying things we can do. Not all of the 5 congressmen from this county are going to vote for that. I think you ought to pick out the 2 that won't and talk to them and convince them. I mean, just from a business perspective. The 2 Republicans on our delegation voted, for example, against keeping, they lined out border infrastructure improvements from the budget. That's not the way to help San Diego, in my opinion, but the business community has to tell them that. The business community, because that's who they listen to. I get Malin on the phone with Duncan and with Darrell. That is, and you gotta drop the R and the D in terms of, we will always support you because you're an R, or we'll always oppose you. I mean, look at the issues that will make San Diego better, and say that's how we're going to judge you, not whether you're a Democrat or Republican. See, we're stuck in this polarization because nobody will make the move across. Look at the issues and say, I'm going to support you or not because of, are you going to help the mega region? Are you going to help San Diego and Tijuana? Are you going to vote for that? And if you're not, why do we have you there? I don't care what party you are. I would take a very open political stance toward them and say, this is important for our region. I mean, for individuals, for the way our Mexican-American community is treated here, but also for trade and for commerce and for culture. We have to have a whole different approach to a broken immigration system. And I think we can get there. But I think we have to be openly, not partisan, but political in terms of how we deal with those issues.
In the rights aspect.
And thank you for all your work on the human rights aspects. You will never let us forget that all people are human. Thank you, Enrique.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I invite you to stay if your schedule allows. We're going to rearrange so we can set up panel 1 at this table. And so we're going to take a second to do that.
Just a second.
Just a second to do that, but let's give the mayor a round of applause and thank him for his time.
Welcome. Salamat po.